Hello ladies and gentlemen, Dave Dobbs here. It's the 19th of April 2023 and apologies I haven't made a video in quite some time. There's been a lot going on and I've had a lot going on a personal level as well. It's all just been a bit of a journey, and I've got a funny feeling that it will probably been a bit of a journey for you as well, with everything that's going on. And it's well, I've got you here on. I'm opening here with this shot that came in on the 29th of March, 2023. So it's been, it's been good more than 2 weeks since I made the last video. And apologies that, and apologies there, and I'm going to open with this shot here. This was the first person I saw that, as in World of Signs, was the first channel that put this up. And in it he's calling it electromagnetic phenomena, and he also adds to this shot this halo here, and people are, who else posted it? Mr. MBB 333 showed it as well. Oh, that was World of Signs there, and UF OVNI 2012, or UFO, I don't know how you're really supposed to pronounce that. It's a French channel actually. They've got quite a big following, and I really like their videos, but I'm not too sure how to correctly, can't seem to speak at all at the moment actually, but correctly pronounce that. UF OVNI 2012, let's say that. I think that's what they meant, that's what it's meant to say. But a lot of people posted it and brought attention to it, and were working on the assumption that it was an AMP. And of course, if you can remember, in my last videos we've been talking about these flybys here, and two fundamental flybys that came in, and I was expecting them. I told you 6 months in advance you're going to see them. I told you more than 6 months. I told you when I built the last model, which I believe was in 2020, we're going to come to that in a shake. But when does this model, that runs up to 2023. So if I just come back to, just to show you what I'm talking about here, as in Charon and Kerberos, which are named after the moons of Pluto. And let's just move that over there, so that's not going to be in a way when. And the last time they affected us was back in 2011, so I'm going to have to go back very quickly to 2011, and you can see they're synced up again, and they're coming through. And obviously this whole model is a very ballpark idea of showing you, and we're going to come to this Jupiter in a sec, because guess what, they've just sent a satellite to Jupiter, which, look, Jupiter is right there in that shot that Jeff P posted on the 14th of October 2016. You can see Jupiter as bright as a button, and in my opinion, because it was seen in the northeast sky at about 10-11 o'clock at night, and that's exactly where Mars was, and we can see that Jupiter is plasma charging into the side of something, and by logic of the position of that shot when that came in, caught on a webcam, that is plasma charging into the side of Mars, and we're going to explore the movement of that as well. We're going to explore a few things here, but before we go any further, I want to, so I can, because you can hear in the background my fan is humming, and so before we start exploring these things, I want to talk about what's coming up for us, and what's coming up for you and me and all of us. And that is the solstice, which is going to be on the 21st of June 2023. And I want to talk about the significance of what that means. And so I've just built a very simple model here, so it doesn't consume too much of my bandwidth, because I've got quite a high-powered computer here that's really now very out of date, really, compared to what I really need to run this type of software. So I've had to make it really, really, really simple. But I want to talk to you a little bit more to touch the 21st of June 2023, and what it really represents and what this time will represent, especially for you at this time. It's a magnificent opportunity for you to connect with your real place in the universe right now, and not in the story that you have, this 500-year-old story that we're in, this standard model. So the reason I've set this up is, you'll notice here that Mars at this point here in the cycle I've got around here, which is not as you would normally understand the movement of Earth and Mars going around the Sun, as the way you'd normally understand Earth, Mars and all the planets you have in your mind given to you by the standard model, the Copernicus standard model, older than it was when Galileo kind of postulated in 1610 and 1613, when he said he'd seen the moons of first said he'd seen Saturn in 1610, and 1613 he said he'd seen Jupiter, bright as a button, big and blue and wonderful in the sky, and he was put under house arrest. And then finally it was revealed that Galileo was right, Copernicus was correct, and of course Galileo was saying he could see Jupiter right there, as bright as we saw it on Jeff P shot on the 14th of October 2016, and many other shots. Steve Rad shot on the 20th of July 2020. An epic shot. There's been so many. There's been innumerable. And we might come to a few of those, but before we go there, I need to get past this little bit so I can switch off Universe Sandbox, which is the software package that I'm using here. And I'd really recommend anyone. It's a very cheap package. It's built by gamers, and as I'm understanding, and it gives you the opportunity to truly understand the Kepler's rules, which is the same time as Galileo, after Copernicus, where he gave us these kind of rules, these 3 rules of orbital mechanics, and which were by and large true as we understand orbital mechanics, although we don't apply it to our sun. We don't apply those rules to our sun. We have the sun in the middle and all the planets going around concentrically, which this now contradicts, but this doesn't contradict Kepler's rules of orbital mechanics, in that when a primary, let's say our sun, that other objects are orbiting and moving forward, objects are coming round. So let's just get our terminologies correct. So we're going to call this sun, which is Helio, this is Mars, and this is Earth. Now at the moment, Mars is the closest to the sun, so we could say that's at its perihelion to the sun. Earth is nearly at its absolute perihelion to the sun. And when it's over here, when Earth is over here, it's going to be at its aperihelion to the sun. And when Mars is here, it's going to be at its perihelion to the sun. And like I see right now, Mars is at its perihelion point to the sun. And if I click that there, we can see now Earth is at its perigee, or Mars is that right? Mars is at its closest point to Earth, its perigee to Earth, and so it's using the same kind of terminology. And now we're going to come to Mars's aperigee to Earth, not its perigee, its aperigee. And you can see that every time I'm adding another object that's coming around, if I kept the sun in the center and the sun didn't move, these objects would all go concentrically around the sun. Now the problem we have is that all our major players in their order of discovery, Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Eris, all been given different perihelion points, which means that they're all saying that the sun is moving in a different direction, because this is the this is the perihelion point. This is the front edge, and because that's the front edge, anything that's going to come along here, as it's travelling along this direction, it's like a car overtaking another car, going in the same direction. It's, if this is travelling at, say, let's just round it off, 100,000 kilometres an hour, and this is travelling at 150,000 kilometres an hour. So let's say that's travelling at 100,000 kilometres an hour, and that's travelling at 150,000 kilometres an hour. When it passes us, it's going to pass us at 50,000 kilometres an hour, because we're already travelling at 100,000. And if that's travelling at 150,000, but you can imagine when this is going this way, when this object comes around and it's saying travelling at 150,000 kilometres an hour, and we're travelling at 100,000 kilometres an hour, then we are travelling past it at 250,000 kilometres an hour, because we've got to add those two together. And that means that the time it spends in this part as it's going here is much quicker than the time it spends in this part. And when it goes past us on the front edge, it's going to be travelling much faster as per Kepler's rules, and much slower at this edge. And so you can imagine if you're building a zodiac for Earth and you've divided this into 12 sections around the Sun, that is not a clear indication. That gives you no window of understanding of the true orbital mechanics, because at any point, this is the Sun, the Earth is going to be moving through these different areas at in different amounts of time. And we've divided these up into 12 sections, haven't we, for our zodiacs and the planets that move in these zodiacs. It makes absolutely no sense. Plus, you can imagine, like, if you've got a distant object, like Uranus, like Neptune, like Pluto, and it's taking a very, very long time to come round, and then it's going to move and be heading towards the Sun, and the Sun is constantly moving forward. It's going to end up cutting across the front of our Sun, much closer to Mars, Earth, Mercury, and Venus, or Venus and Mercury in order, actually. But so this poses a massive problem when you add motion, and this program here is a program that when I take this and I just, let's go to universes, solar systems, and let's look at the standard solar system. We're gonna load that up, and we're just gonna look at what speed they've got the Sun. It's gonna pause that, and we're gonna look at the speed that they've set the Sun at to make this model work, to have all the planets in a concentric ring. We're going to go to the speed that they've set, miles per second. Let's make that a bit more understandable. Kilometers an hour, and we've got 6 kilometers an hour to make the standard model work. Is that realistic? Is that realistic that the Sun moves at 6 kilometers an hour to make our standard model work? In all honesty, is that realistic? So let's look at the speed that that Saturn, they've got Saturn going, and Saturn's going at, in kilometers an hour, it's going at 33,000 kilometers an hour. So we've got to make the speed of the Sun relative to this model, because all the models are a bit different, but one thing's for sure, all these models that you're going to find on Universe Sandbox, built with Newtonian kind of science, are all going to have the Sun static to make this ridiculous model work. So let's add, let's come back to the Sun, and let's change from miles per second, let's go to kilometers an hour, and now we're going to change that to, say, 10,000 kilometers an hour. And where have they set the speed? They've set the speed that way, so let's just keep the speed that way, and let's just rotate it down so we can see. And what we're going to do is we're going to speed it up, so we can see all the planets. We're going to speed that up. When we move the rotation, we're going to speed it by, let's do it by, because years per second. And let's do 1 year per second. Actually, let's do 3 years per second, because we haven't got a lot of time to do this, and you want to get through this as quickly as I do. Enter. I'm going to get rid of that, and let's play that. Now, obviously, the planets in the centre are moving much faster. Now, look how close Jupiter just came round to the central hub there. See how quickly it goes this side, and how slow it goes that side, and then it comes around here. It's going to go much faster. Now we're getting an idea that they've set these planets. Can you see it's because it's moving forward? Uranus is now going to have to. Uranus has come between Saturn and the Sun. Now, the sheer logic of as soon as you add motion to this ridiculous 500-year-old model, where all your main players are given a different perihelion point, saying that the Sun is moving in a different direction to make this barbaric model work, you are having to... now Eris is going around completely the wrong way to the existing models, because it's its model, this is the slowest we can set it to make it all come round and all these objects move around. We've ended up with a terrible situation where we cannot add motion to we cannot add motion. No one can add motion to our Sun when you've got all the perihelion points, all these new planets given a different forward motion. They're all contradicting each other. They're all pulling in the wrong direction. That none of them are making any sense. None of them are making any sense whatsoever. The whole thing has fallen apart. Uranus has just cut straight past the Sun. Has literally come straight through past all of our planets, and would have caused havoc to our solar system. Given if we add motion, not even that fast motion, we're going at a relatively slow speed. We've kept it at 30,000. That's about 20,000 miles an hour, which is still a ridiculously slow speed to suggest our Sun is travelling. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you there, because your current idea, none of you will have any clue which way your Sun is. We're going to exit that now. Excuse me 1 second. Well, that slows down, and exit. And hopefully that will give me a little bit more bandwidth to make this video, and hopefully the video won't shut down. So when we're talking about where the direction of our Sun and which way the Sun is actually going, I spent years and years and years developing this model. And if you look at my channel and you see I've never said this is not correct. This is not correct. This is just a beginning to understand. Have I got the original? So let's just come back. Let's come out of a macro view of, and just remind ourselves of how, this idea of this model, coming back to 262, as you've explored with me many times, this is when we had 3 days of darkness. This is when we had earthquakes all across Asia, all across Europe, all across Africa. And when I learned about this date, I discovered this date through mathematics, through building this model, and I'd got to 274, and I still didn't find the earthquakes and the 3 days of darkness that happened in 262 until about 2 years later. Even though I was so close to understanding, I was 12 years out, and yet it wasn't in. I couldn't find it on the internet. I couldn't find it, and I ended up finding it in the Edinburgh Encyclopedia when I finally worked out actually I might be 12 years out, and I deducted 12 years from 274. I don't know if you remember the video years back. I said the miracle had just occurred, and I discovered through mathematics, and I showed it, and then it was finally I'd got this date, realizing that this was when the real downfall of Rome actually occurred. This is when Jesus had come along around this time, when, like Galileo seeing Jupiter for the first time, they'd seen this star coming in and they knew it was going to come closer, and he said, if you carry on in your warring way to the Romans, who thus crucified him, you're going to see a massive cataclysm. You have to change your ways. You cannot rule through a fist of war and brutal decimation of your perceived enemies, to enslave them for your just for greed and control. You have to raise the vibration on this planet, or you will be decimated yourselves. And sure enough, have I got that right? I went the wrong way, didn't I? It's coming back to let's come back to the time of Jesus. So Jesus would have been round about. Well, that's where it kind of starts. So that would have been around about the time Jesus was seeing. There was the star. It's coming into view, and then then it causes the big cataclysms that happen in 262 then. And so that's very, very similar to, Galileo. We come forward now to get here 1,000 years from the time of Christ. We're all on the opposite sides of the whole system that we're really orbiting. And then we come, like I say, to 1600s, and we're getting closer, and then we get the first sightings of this new planet. And then 84 years later, we got Isaac Newton, and then it's kind of like every 84 years, pretty much, we're kind of inventing a new dwarf planet until we come to Pluto. And that's why I name all the planets, all these objects that I'm seeing after Pluto's moons. And I've successfully predicted these since 2015, based on all the sightings that came in since 2011, and was able to, and have been able, just like the last two sightings in February and March this year, that were massive, and we were expecting them. We were expecting all the massive earthquakes that came with them. And after those flybys, I was able to predict these flybys. And then, of course, it did exactly what I said it was going to do. It flew by, and now we're just seeing the tail of that. You're looking up the tail of the system that flew by, and you're seeing all the debris in the tail and no object. The object has gone. The object flew by as I demonstrated here. When we come to 2005, let's come back to 2023. And just as I said, it would fly by, and as it flew by, suddenly it's gone, and you've just got the tail. And it's more this object. It's more this object, this second object, Charon, which is the biggest of, in the realms of Pluto's moon. Charon was the biggest moon, and so that's why I put that one there. And as it flies by, you're not looking at the object itself as you were looking in those shots, in those previous shots that came in February and March. You're looking just at the tail of it and the absence of the planet, because that's flown by. You saw all the earthquakes starting in the southern hemisphere and moving up, and then going into the northern hemisphere. And when you think about the sun, it's come back again. To understand what's going to happen on the 21st, let's just come back again and have an aerial view again of the Pluto system here, and it's crossing the ecliptic of the whole system that we're in. Well, we're actually crossing the ecliptic. We're coming from below and coming up and crossing the ecliptic, and we're now in the northern hemisphere. So we can imagine that the whole electromagnetic energy, that we're going from negative to positive or positive to negative. I'm not honestly too sure which side is which in terms of polarity, but we are changing our overall polarity, which means that everything is going to change on our planet now. It means the magma in our planet could very possibly change rotation. It means that where water goes down the sink and it goes one direction, it could very potentially start to begin to turn out and go the other direction, which means that when we get massive great cyclones and storms and tornadoes, their whole cycle of which direction they turn. At the moment, they kind of go clockwise, I think, in the northern hemisphere, and they could very easily turn now and begin to go anti-clockwise. There could be massive changes. It doesn't mean the whole planet is going to shift and go over, but what it means for me is a very potential different change in the whole polarity of the north and the south. It could mean that the North Pole becomes in the South Pole, that compasses actually start to point down south instead of, and that could be the north. That doesn't necessarily mean the whole planet is going to shift. When you change the direction of the polarity in a motor, the motor turns direction. That doesn't mean that the planet absolutely changes in its rotation. It just means that there's aspects. It could mean that it changes in direction. It could mean that. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it won't mean that. It could mean that the whole planet stops and turns around the other direction. It could be that it flips. I don't think it will. I think there will be. I think these changes. I think there's going to be changes. No one knows what's going to be the changes. We just don't know. We can just see that we've changed polarity. But you can imagine that the sun is moving forward this direction, and when the Earth is here, it's December the 21st, when it's directly in front of the sun. And we know this because of the angle our Earth sits at, as many of the other planets. This angle that gives us our seasons, that is actually sitting perpendicular to the big. You can't see it down here unless I come back and show you Planet X. But this and this are both our Sun and Pluto, or whatever you want to call this. Whether you want to call it Uranus, whether you want to call it Neptune, whether you want to call it Pluto, whether you want to call it Jupiter. They're all the same thing. Uranus has got an 84-year orbit. Neptune's got 2 times 84-year orbit. Pluto's got 3 times 84-year orbit. Every 84 years we have to reinvent this blue thing when it comes into sight, because we're not understanding the true orbital mechanics. But certainly the inner planets that are definitely orbiting the sun from Mars. You think beyond Mars is the asteroid belt. And supposedly every satellite they sent out beyond Mars to anything beyond, to Jupiter and Neptune and Pluto and Uranus and all the rest of it, every dwarf planet they've visited beyond Mars has sailed straight through, the satellite has sailed straight through the asteroid belt without any consequences. And they've never used, not one of them has ever used Mars as a gravity assist. They've all gone towards Venus, all of them. Why? Now they say it's to get more acceleration and that sort of stuff, but doesn't that seem a bit mad that wouldn't you rather just fly off to Mars and use Mars as an opportunity to gravity assist or to slingshot? But none of them do. And you got to ask yourself why. Why? And that's the first thing you've got to ask. And then, so if that forward motion is December the 21st, so when the Earth gets to here and it comes to December the 21st, that is the very front edge of the system of our solar system. So when you come to the absolute opposite end, June, when you're looking forward here, it's very difficult to decide which, because you can't tell when you're looking forward here into the night sky, when the Earth is here and you're looking forward in this direction. It's very difficult to say which is exactly the forward motion. The only time you can get a real absolute pivotal understanding of what is absolutely forward for you is actually when you're on June the 21st and you're looking directly at the sun on June the 21st. You can see exactly your forward motion. And on that day, you can connect to your place in the cosmos, your absolute true pivotal place in the cosmos. And I can promise you, if you do a meditation at that point, you're going to be looking at the front end of where you're absolutely going. And that is a powerful meditation because of what's happening to the planet right now. So I want to bring you to that, first of all, what's coming up and what a dynamic meditation that would be for you and what a powerful place it would be for you in the grand scheme of things right now, because everything is, the shit is hitting the fan now, guys. I think you're realizing that, they're going to send a satellite out. They're sending a satellite out now, but they're actually let me come now. Let's zoom into this and see where Jupiter really is. And so we're going to come forward again now to 2023. and show you where Jupiter really is. It's not nearly as big as you've been told. The standard model you've been given is utter bullshit. It doesn't work. It is utterly ridiculous. You might believe it. It's just a belief system. You're not going to be able to get kids to believe it because they have to build these models and they realise it's utter bullshit. No young, enthusiastic astronomer using these models would ever believe that the standard model is correct, because they would never be able to make it work, because it's utterly ridiculous. So 2014, 2016, 2021, 2022. Now, you remember, we're just going to hold that to 2023, and we're going to look at Hydra coming in here, and it's going to come round, and it only runs up to there, but ironically, it's a little bit further than that. It's coming around to here. Now, just to give you an example of that, we saw, as I showed in the model, remember me showing you that shot, which came in November, of this object going right in front of the sun. That is Jupiter. That's not one of these objects. That is Jupiter. I think Brandon Corey-Nagley's just showed a very recent shot of Jupiter, actually. Jupiter, as I showed you. Very possibly Jupiter, but that also could be Mars, because Mars, obviously, when we get to that perihelion point, it's much closer. That shot there, Jupiter, that was on the 9th of July, 2020. Blocked the sun again, just like that shot. We've got corroborating shots of this. It moves. That was Steve Rath's shot on the 20th of July. Jupiter. 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 Look at that shot of Jupiter. You just can't believe it. But it's there, over and over. What on my mind is Jupiter. Jupiter, that was obviously the 14th of October. What was interesting was when Elon Musk, Jupiter, wow, look at that. We've just epic shots of it, over and over and over again, mathematically. The best shot, I think, was when Elon Musk sent the car into space and he showed the red and the blue Kachina, just like the Hopi prophecies, and he showed it in the view of the car. Notice it's supposed to be a lens flare, but hang on, why doesn't the lens flare go across Earth? Why is that behind the Earth, if that was a lens flare? That's a shot. So he sent a car into space. It cost millions and millions, more money you can ever believe. And in the windscreen, all you can see is the car looking directly at Jupiter, spinning in space. People say it's a lens flare that sits behind Earth. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that we could be so charged, but unfortunately we are connected to so many belief stories. You know, most of us can't look at the volcanoes, the massive amount of volcanoes going off, not just on Mars, but the massive amount of volcanoes going off on, like, you know, Chevaluch is going absolutely crazy. Popocatépetl is erupting like you cannot believe. We just had one of the biggest eruptions of Chevaluch since the 60s. Jupiter. It just Jupiter. That's not Jupiter, by the way. That is well, that could be Jupiter. Well, that probably is Jupiter, actually. That was on the that was, I believe, 2013. It was amazing shot. You know, we just had, and they were the shots. You remember the original shots that all came 200 days apart that enabled me to start realizing, oh my God, these things are the same thing. There's a massive pattern going on here, and and that was, you know, coming back to that shot there, just to remind us of what that was. When I'd built this current model in 2020, straight after I'd built it, there had been this discovery of these statues, and two of these statues, one was a mature grey alien, which is this one, cradling a baby Inca god, and then there was a mature Inca god cradling a baby grey alien. And on the mature grey alien, you had this symbol. And Rach, my partner at the time, we're going through a bit of a split up process at the moment, and we're, you know, it's a bit tricky, and you know, we're really challenged at the moment, and so it's not been an easy time for us. But she was in this crop circle in 2009, and she said, "Oh my God, I was in a crop circle that looked just like that." And then when we looked at the crop circle, it was exactly the same image, and I'd realised that I'd built this system. That's the Pluto and its moons. This is our sun and its moons, all on a plane. And this is the real Planet X system that both Pluto or Jupiter or Uranus or Neptune, whatever you want to call it, all the same thing that we reinvent every 84 years since Galileo's time, and our sun orbiting Planet X. And as it moves through the ecliptic plane, these angles change depending on whether they've got to come down to our sun or up to our sun. Now our sun is sitting above the ecliptic plane of this system, and the objects orbiting around Pluto are now having to come up to our sun, where before they were coming down to our sun. And since 2018 to 2021, where we've had all the long duration volcanoes, they've been coming into our sun on the same ecliptic plane. So they've been coming very close to the objects orbiting our sun, and they've been causing long duration volcanoes, the likes that we've only seen when we invent these blue dwarf planets. I.e., the biggest one ever was in Galileo's time, and that was beaten, if you like, by La Palma again, which was in Galileo's time in 2021. And I made the videos and say, guys, here we go, here we're coming into it. Long duration volcanoes. It started with Kilauea on May the 4th, 2018, and then since that time, and now it's stopped. Now we go back to shorter bursts, but very intense bursts. You know, obviously focused around the moon, because the moon's going to magnify that. And so let's go back now to Jupiter. We've got coming in, I've called it Hydra here, because in the original one I called Jupiter here. This model, I put Jupiter in this one coming around because I was of a mind that Jeff's P shot was originally, when I did it, I couldn't imagine that Jupiter could be so big and come past us then. Of course, you know, this has been, but I'd always calculated, because of all the earthquakes, all the volcanoes, and all the other kind of stuff that we've been going on, that there must have been a third flyby that I could calculate to be slightly different to these two. These pair, always seen in a pair. We've got so many shots of them in a pair. And we'd had all the evidence of something else, so I'd assumed it must have been a third flyby. And in reality, it was this big blue object. But when I'd, so you can imagine, now just to come back to that again, and come over to that shot there, you can see how I'd show, can you see Mars there? How I tried to show you that in that model. But you can see that they synced up on that point, and that's when I knew, that's when I realised, oh my God, the big thunderbolt was caused by Jupiter going past Mars. And it was, except it had come in and around here. It hadn't come around here. And that was, you know, and so I had to, and to cover myself there, what I'd done was not to cover myself, but to bring into the orbital mechanics, I'd added Hydra as a possibility. I knew this one was correct. I knew this one correct. I didn't know if this one with the Jupiter movement was correct, but it was a postulation, and you know, so we're accounting for it. So I added Hydra as an account as a potential. So that's really the blue one. But I called it Hydra just to bring that into the chart. So it was always there, so we could bring that in as an idea in and say, well, let's have that as a potential idea of, because the mathematics of its existence are there. It's just we hadn't had any direct evidence of the flybys seen there, but we certainly had, like you know, that shot I just showed you, and that I said that was possibly Jupiter in 2013. That was you know, there's been many attributions to this model that have led me to the understanding that this one exists as well. I mean, how many flybys have I shown you over and over again? How many earthquakes and volcanoes and unusual big anomalies have I predicted in advance? Like you know, when I said you cannot tell me there's not going to be oceanic anomalies on the 28th of September 2018. And then, you know, remember when Krakatoa went bang and it caused a massive tsunami? And I'd been in America the year before with the same flyby, and I turned up on the day of the flyby. I know it's, you know, I'm just going around in circles here, and a bit like all of this really, and I feel like I'm, you know, I'm powerless in all this. But nonetheless, they're going to try and visit this, and they're going to, where are we now? We're not as far forward as that. So this is already crossed actually, so that's a little bit behind. Have I got the right one there? I've got the angles of this slightly wrong, to be honest with you. And I've got that going slightly further back, and I'd expected it to be further forward. So it's still slightly incorrect, but I'm not that far off. It's more around here now. And so we are going to send a satellite out to it, and this will be our perfect time to send a satellite out to it and to go round Venus and then up to it. Notice that Chevelute and Popocatépetl, all the big volcanoes are going off in the northern hemisphere. So it's up here now. It's somewhere over here. So they're going to come in, go round Venus and come up to it. It's not going to take 8 years to get to it. It's going to take about 8 weeks. And they are going to be arriving at a very much smaller blue planet than you've been led to believe. And that blue planet that's going to come by, as I'm understanding, is what many refer to as the fifth dimension. As in, it's not, you know, our Earth astral realms are based on Earth, but our higher realms, what we might refer to as heaven, is built on all our best. You know, Earth astral realms are your individual realms, and we invite into those realms those that we individually want to have in our realms, that we open to, and we allow in. And sometimes we have to reincarnate in Earth to overcome things that we've invited in that haven't been good for us, and we've had to push them out, and we've had to come back to Earth and come back into the physical form and overcome and go through big purges of our astral realms and reclaim our power. But the fifth dimension, the Earth higher realm, higher dimension, is a realm of where it's all of our best, and you can only get into that realm if you enter a consensual peace agreement. You have to arrive. In this realm you can do what you like, and it's a karmic realm, so what you put out comes back to you, and people can get very stuck on Earth and very stuck in karmic cycles. And those who have invaded Earth in ways that it's very difficult to understand, they've invaded our astral realms. They're terrified of being here on the third dimension, as in the physical realm, because it's a very heavy, dense realm, and so they invade. The invasion of this planet is taking over humanity and using us to manifest and build astral realms for those that have actually invaded this space. And that's very difficult. It's a very, very kind of like confusing aspect. And what's being offered now, because of Earth is now, because of this big transition, when this object passes Earth, and I'm assuming it's going to be this year because it's been getting closer and closer and closer every year, and because of what we're seeing with the big the big volcanoes going off now, this object, it came in in the northern hemisphere, and it's still in the northern hemisphere, and it's going to come down, and it's going to stay in the northern hemisphere, and it's going to head down just into the southern hemisphere, but only just in the southern hemisphere, as it spins back, as it goes back round Pluto, and it comes back round. But Pluto is below us now, but only just below us. So it's going to cut through around about here. By my calculations, oh, true, I thought it was going to be last year, and it was very close. We had some of the worst storms you can imagine last year, incredible storms. And the previous year, every year since 2018, the storms have got exponentially worse here at this point here. This has been your biggest activity, and this, again, will be some of the, admittedly, these two objects that affected us over the last 4 or 5 years, over into the July period, have been much, much more affecting us here, and have been moving back to this point, because they've been dropping back 1 calendar month every year. So every year they do a full rotation, but they come 1 month, if you like, further back than they did the year before. So, you know, so they've been dropping back a month every year. And so rather than affecting us here, over here, where they were the last 3 or 4 years, they've been affecting us closer and closer to this point. And they're going to drop back here, and then we're going to start seeing the incredible sightings back here in the coming years. We're gonna, you know, in 2024, 2025, 2026, we're going to get amazing sightings in massive sightings like we did in February, March. The sort of sightings that we got on January the 20th, 2017, that really put me on the map. Those sightings are all going to start coming over here, but these objects are going to be, they're not going to be coming in on the ecliptic plane. We've done that. They're going to be coming in. Let's get this right. It's going to come up. They came under this time, and then they've crossed over, and they're going to come up, and then they're going to go down there. They're going to come back in. They're going to be moving into the southern hemisphere, much more into the southern hemisphere in this passage. So there's still going to be amazing sightings, but there's going to be earthquakes and volcanoes, which are quite normal with these passages, but they're not going to be super massive. You know, what we've got here for these objects here is we're coming very close at this point in the April-May position to, I call this bit Asteroid Alley, April-May, and these objects, and even though these objects now are all moving into the northern hemisphere, they came in from the south and they're moving up into the northern hemisphere. They've passed, as evident by the shot that World of Signs showed of the tail. That's the point. That's Asteroid Alley point. You know, April to May. This is the point where all sides tried to desperately antagonize the other into starting World War III. This is the point, because everyone's trying to make an asteroid fall on the enemy. This is the point, you know, and of course this is the same point that, you know, where Spain was led into this understanding that if it led this massive invasion in 1588, Galileo's big time, you know, when we saw the first dwarf planet coming in, and we're marveling at this wonderful thing, and the Catholics, well, not so much the Catholics, it wasn't Rome that did this, it was Spain. You see, Spain was so powerful, it was almost more powerful than Rome. And so they were enticed into going on this invasive maneuver, just like we're being enticed into going onto this invasive maneuver at this time. And if we do an attack at this time, then an asteroid will fall on us. That's literally what will happen. You know, that's why I wrote in my book that unprecedented. When I said that Britain, you know, when the book I published in 2010, 2011, well, it published in 2011, this book, Laughing Gas, as I often talk about, it says Britain will be used as the Trojan horse to break up the European alliance and feed Europe into a war against Russia, try to lure Europe into attacking Russia at this point. So this is the Catholic Church in America, taking over America, using Britain as the Trojan horse to feed Europe, to break the European alliance, to break the euro, the only thing that really threatens the US dollar right now, to break the euro, to break the European alliance, and to feed Europe into a war against Russia. And that's what I said in 2000, when I published this in 2011. And it explores a lot of this. It doesn't talk about Planet X. I didn't understand what Planet X. I was just told when I wrote this book and I opened up my link to the Guides and the Gods that I said I understand now that everything I've ever been taught from, you know, I'd walled off my understanding of volcanoes because of my belief that a volcano produces hundreds of thousands of tons of, you know, it's like 80,000 tons on a big eruption of Etna or Stromboli. God knows what Chevaluch and Popocatépetl and those sort of volcanoes are like. These super high altitude, massive volcanoes. Not like the little volcanoes like Stromboli and Etna that produce only about 80 million tons of carbon dioxide. That's 80 million tons of rock going into the sky and it's not going to come back down. Normally, if you chuck 80 million tons of rock into the sky, you'd run because your chances of survival would be very limited. And yet here we send 80 to 100 million tons of rock into the sky and it doesn't come down again. So what does it go into? It's got all the heat. It's going up to something like 4,000 or 5,000 degrees Celsius. It's got the heat. It's got all the oxygen in the air. It's got the oxygen and it's got all the matter. It's got all the three aspects it needs to make combustion occur: heat, fuel, and oxygen. And so it combusts, and most of it gets burned off into carbon dioxide, and then sulfur dioxide, and then all of the silicates melt into these tiny little beads, which then are 100 trillion squillion tiny little. Now, we say flowers make rain. All the pollen goes up, and the moisture condenses on. You need a particle to make rain. So what does a volcano do? You've got all this moisture coming up from the ocean. It condenses on all of these tiny particles, and it sucks up all the air. And then as soon as that air moves over land and it loses its lift of all the moisture coming up, feeding this process, it drops out of the sky and we get rivers dropping from the sky, mega rivers. It dwarfs what's in a river. Yet we've walled all that off behind the carbon zero story because we've demonized the most unbelievable, beautiful process of carbon dioxide, the most sacred process on the planet of what carbon dioxide does. And we've made that evil in our little story, and we can't see the story of volcanoes, so we can't look at any of the volcanoes. And environmentalists can't look at volcanoes because once they're attached to the carbon zero story, you know. And of course, so we've got all the volcanoes going off, we've got all that, and the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is, so we've pretty much done that, we've done what they're going to do. The next thing I want to talk to you is about, the other thing I talked about in Laughing Gas was that if they take us into a free trade deal, and the whole thing was if we leave, many people were saying we want to leave Europe, back in the Brexit, and they were saying Europe wants to take us into the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And of course at the end of March, Rishi Sunak signed the it's not called TPP, it's partly Trans-Pacific Partnership, and they call it something else as well. But it is the, what are they calling it? They're calling it the CPTPP. And it's basically Britain has gone and signed the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which means that Britain is now hooked up to member state dispute systems. And which means that, you know, Canada is the most sued nation on the planet. And this was what I said was, you know, I was predicting we were leaving Europe because I could see that we were going to go into these free trade deals, and that was what's on the table. And people couldn't understand, and the people screaming in my face, spitting blood, saying Europe wants to take us into Trans-Pacific Partnership. And of all those people screaming in my face that Europe wants to take us into the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and then suddenly we sign a free trade deal, and all those people screaming in my face, spitting blood in my face, telling me that Europe wants to do it, I have not heard a single word from any of them. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And Canada signed a free trade deal. As many of you know, Canada is the most sued nation on the planet. It's never won a single case. It means that anything you can do, anything you want to do in a country that is legal to do in one of the member states of the free trade deal you've signed, has the right to do it in your country. And if they can't do it in your country, then they can sue you for the cost of the business they would have made. Now, if they can sue you, if they can come in and they can take any aspect of business they like, abortions are legal in America now, as in abortions at birth. It may never happen in America, but you understand, because it's legal there, they can so the body parts market can now be created, and countries that have a very low GDP that have signed this can now be taken to court for the rights of doing late stage abortions. They can do anything. There's no restriction. Now all the stuff they're going to add into the foods that were in the old, they can just do that. There's no restriction on any type of profiteering anyone wants to do. And if they have the right to do anything they want, and if you don't let them do it, then you have to pay. Who owns Britain? Is it owned by the Commonwealth anymore? Is it owned by any of that? It's not. It's all owned by corporations that they have the right over everything. If you have to pay to protect your rights and your heritage, and you have to pay another country billions and billions for your right to protect that, then who owns it? You don't own it anymore. We don't own it. We're just sold down the line. It's utterly sold down the line. So it's happened. It's been signed. It broke my heart. I didn't know what to do. I saw it. I've done everything in my power to try and stop that. And I know that I failed there. I failed in most of this, really. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was, just as Prince Charles is about to be crowned, Britain is going to take depleted uranium bombshells to the battlefield. So now you understand that you can have a certain amount of technology, as I've often talked about, in a rocket. But, all this kind of talk about, remember the Patriot missiles, and then the Russians developed the S-300, and the Americans developed the THAAD, and these are missiles that knock out missiles and knock out missiles. Before you even get to the intercontinental ballistic missile that one or other country might take out. And I saw a recent article saying that Russia had bitten off more than it can chew, and this is where Xi Jinping had just kind of done a deal with Russia, and that Russia had become Russia and China, and then North Korea shows all of its nukes that it's put together, and the newspapers are saying that Russia's bitten off more than it can chew, and Britain's saying, we're going to take this nuclear. We're going to start using depleted uranium bombshells, and this is the bread basket. We're talking about Ukraine, the bread basket of Europe, and we're going to cover it with depleted uranium bombshells, claiming that it's not bad for your health, even though we can see the birth defects going off the radar in anywhere they've been used. The servicemen coming back with all sorts of kind of post-traumatic, kind of toxic cancerous injuries. The whole thing's going off the radar, and we're just going to sweep all of that under the carpet, along with all the radiation spewing out of Fukushima after it erupted on the last big flyby in 2011. With that big tsunami and the nuclear power stations that went into meltdown. And we're taking this for Charles's crowning. He's going to open his legacy with depleted uranium bombshells on the breadbasket of what was Europe and Russia. And Britain is being played here. Britain thinks it's powerful. Britain is walking into a massive trap here. It's being set up. It's being set up to make a terrible mistake and to believe that it's so powerful with all its technology, and it is making a massive mistake. We are being set up for a fall. And and the last thing I just want to say is that they're saying the front cover of the Financial Times the day before yesterday was kind of like the government's looking at the whole kind of like, remember what was set up after 2008, after the big crash. It's already been dwarfed by, like the two big banks that have just recently gone down, Credit Suisse, or however you say it, and the Silicon, whatever it is, bank. These massive banks, and already it's dwarfed what happened in 2008, as I'm understanding. And the government's already talking about whether it should abandon its kind of like its backing of, I can't remember the exact details, but it's in question at the moment as to whether the governments would be able to back up people's deposits in the case of a crash. And of course they're gonna. I think it was Liz Truss, whatever her name was, Liz Truss, who kind of like, she was only in power for 44 days, and she removed so much of the legislation that was put in place after 2008 to make way for this massive crash. And of course, that's what I talk about in Laughing Gas as well. Is the biggest short. They're going to orchestrate the biggest short you can ever imagine as they get ready for this whole new system they're going to go into, because they have to come out of these fiat-based money systems. They know they have to, because everyone's got the same level of technology, and the only way out of this is to, instead of having a gun under the table, there's going to have to be real value put back onto the table. All countries are going to have to come to the table with real value, and that's one of the things that's going to solve the problems on this planet. Some countries are going to try and go against this and kind of try and reinstate hegemony, as in control of the currencies only through war. And Britain will likely try and do that. America will likely try and do this, but the opposition that they're going to meet is a nuclear-backed opposition with the same level of technology that they have. All the same level. It's checkmate all around the table. Ukraine, really, more than anything else, is all of these countries coming together to try and battle out a way of moving forward where we all have an equal footing. And I hope that will be the situation that comes out of this. But if Britain takes depleted uranium bombshells to believe that that's not a technological jump with our missiles and everything else like that, that's not like, the S-400 beating the THAAD, or these new Chinese missiles now that can shoot out a THAAD missile, that are going to the market. Of course, the Ukraine is going to start buying these Chinese weapons. They're going to get much cheaper, that are more powerful. Iran is now pumping out, with the help of China, pumping out the type of American drones that were downed a number of years ago. Do you remember that American drone that fell, state-of-the-art drone that fell, and Iran managed to land? It didn't fall out of the sky. Iran landed it. They took over the computer system. They bypassed its self-destruct systems. They landed it, and they're now pumping them out, and they're calling them these kamikaze drones. They're American drones copied, and are being mass produced by China and Iran, and as I'm understanding it, Russia now. Russia's got them. Everyone's got them, and they're being used against us. And it's checkmate on the war table. It's checkmate, and we've got to realise that if we don't go to war now, as it says in Laughing Gas, the easiest way to stop World War III is not to start it. So we all have to kind of work back down on this and realise that there's no winners. There's so many new industries. There's so many new opportunities. When I left school in 2000 and in 1985, and we were coming into a recession. The densest part of the recession came in 1991, and Norman Lamont's Black Wednesday, and I remember it so great. There was no opportunities. There was no real opportunity. There was nothing, and all the kids were playing at home, playing Cubase and learning how to make music. They invented a whole new kind of entertainment industry, party industry. Now the entertainment industry is bigger than the weapons industry, so much so that you could very seriously get all these people to seriously work out now whether it would be more efficient and more profitable to have a massive war in Ukraine or have a massive party. Both would be utterly profitable, equally profitable, if you just turned Ukraine into a massive party, had a massive festival, a massive year-long festival in Ukraine would be as profitable now as all the weapons that they're trying to drop and pollute and destroy Ukraine with. Literally. John Cousins, the Green candidate for Glastonbury, talked about that in his speech and had all the figures of it. An amazing guy. And every time I've run for government ironically, the last time I ran for government in Glastonbury in the general elections was around 2015, and ironically I run against James Heapy, who's now the man straight from the MOD into the main swing state of the British politics for the Tories, and I was running against him, and I can remember turning around and saying, and people saying, "How you going?" My manifesto was a miracle. You know, I was doing it as a bit of a piss take, a total piss take, but my manifesto was a miracle, and people said, "How are you going to make a miracle happen?" And I said, well, you know, it's a bit tricky, isn't it? Because miracles can't be man-made. They're kind of a welcome event that can't be man-made. But could we vote on one? Could we open ourselves to that as a solution? Because we ain't leaving ourselves many options. And then I was sitting right next to James Heapy, the Tory candidate, who's the one who's telling the Iranians they can bomb targets in Russia, that they have the right to bomb targets in Russia, that's pushing for kind of like heavy artillery and all the rest of the stuff. He's the one who's pushing for kind of depleted uranium bombshells, the whole shaboodle. And he's there, and I'm standing right next to him because I pay 500 quid, and everyone thinks, what the hell are you doing? You're running for government, your message is a fucking miracle, what the fuck are you doing? But I didn't want to go against. John Cousins was running. You know, there was Lib Dems that were amazing speakers, and I didn't want to go against them. I didn't want to take votes away from them, but I wanted to be able to have a voice in it. And people were just, you just wasted 500 quid. And then I looked at everyone after I said the whole miracle thing, and they was just straight faced looking at me just like, what are you going on about? And I said, oh no, you're giving us the John Lydon look. Never trust a hippie. And then I looked down at James Heapy and I said, or is it never trust a heapy? And everyone in the room stood up at this hustings in Wells near Glastonbury and just jumped up and cheered. It's like I'd scored for Britain. It was like I'd scored for Britain. And every person in the room I knew in that moment thought, that was the best 500 quid you've ever spent. From one moment, I went from zero to hero with that one comment. And now a lot of people, because even now, as James Heapy has become one of the main ministers representing the whole Ukraine war movement for the Tories and pushing this whole agenda, I get told that all the time. It comes up over and over and over again. Oh my God, you were so friggin' right. Not that he's a bad man, he's a warring man. He's straight from the MOD. He's just like straight into British politics, straight in. This was the whole focus, the whole way down. Just as I've been saying in my book, the whole way. This is where it's going. If you leave Europe, your fate is sealed, and you can see where this is going. It's going to a catastrophic place. And all these crazy flybys, all of these things that I predicted, based on the absolute orbital mechanics that we can see, it's been a long process. But guys, we are at that juncture now. We are here at that place. Can you understand everything I've been talking about now? Is it all not laid bare? Even though so many of you are pushing your own agendas in this and are so attached to your own agendas, especially the Christians in the community, are still so attached to these stories that you are blinded by your beliefs. So much so that we are blinded by belief. We are utterly blinded. We build their invisible walls that we put up and we hide behind as if we're not there, as if these things aren't going on. 500-year-old antiquated perspective of the universe with a static sun has blinded us from all of these things that we're seeing, because we can't allow them, because we're in a 500-year-old outdated model. We can't see all the volcanoes, all of the big seismic and volcanic events. We can't look at any of them because they interfere with our carbon zero bullshit environmental greenwashing. And these Christian stories, all the same. We can't see the planet because we can only see Jesus, created by the very people that hid all of these planets, all of this massive thing behind belief stories. We've put belief stories up everywhere. And all I can tell you is the believers will be leaving shortly. And if you don't want to be one of those, then you need to arrive. You need to arrive here, and not many of you are actually here on this planet right now. But you think you are. You want to be here. And I'm asking you on the 21st of June to do a process that helps you arrive here, where you triangulate your true and real place in the universe, and you connect to your forward motion in its simplest form. You are moving forward, and I want you to visualize, look at the sun at sunrise or sunset, and see yourself move, see your sun, and you're moving forward in that aspect. And ahead of the sun is the perihelion point, where all the planets come round the front edge. Visualize that frontal place, that frontal position. See where you're going, because at the moment you have no clue where your sun is going. You haven't incorporated that. You can't visualize how things are coming in and going out. You can't visualize in your current model your closest proximity to these different objects, and where the real kind of junctures of where you might jump on and jump off are, where you might come in as a visitor to this planet, where the points of arrival and where the points of departure are. You have no picture of your true zodiac. Thank you if you followed me this long. Thank you so much. This is happening now. We're going to come very close to these objects in April, May. Like I said, it's going to be a massive push to try and start World War III. The message I was given was, don't worry about your planet. I've already deployed my best. Unprecedented peace will now be waged on your Earth. So I'm not thinking that World War III is going to start now. I'm seeing this failing. And the best case scenario is the collapse of the pound, the collapse of the euro, the collapse of the dollar, and the moving into new gold-backed, security-backed currencies, and us to merge and use the power that we now have to strike a deal with BRICS and come up with a new way of dealing with things on a peaceful level, and not go nuclear, not go for nuclear heck, not go for all out. We will not win. Everything will go against us. We will draw in the wrath of the gods now. If we go against this, we can go peacefully through this and use the power that we all have to negotiate a new financial system where we reverse what Richard Nixon did, where he took the gold off the table and just put guns under the table. Nixon took away the gold standard. We called it decimalization, where we took away the silver standard. We need to go back to real value. That's all that's happening. You cannot play Monopoly at the Christmas table and then expect your money to be worth all that beyond that Christmas table, and expect to buy your mates' houses and all their assets with Mickey Mouse money. We've got to come out of Mickey Mouse money. That's all that's happening now. And as we go into this system, what Laughing Gas was all about was the solution to this world right now is to remove all of the hacks that are affecting humanity. But who should have the final choice over which soul finally resides in your body? Should it be the ego hack, or should it be the highest aspect? Maybe you see the ego hack as the highest aspect. Many beings on this planet have chosen the ego hack. There's no right or wrong answer. There's no good or bad. You could call it more economic. Your soul is safe. But going down this corridor and going into a karmic equation at this point that is destructive might stop your ability to go to the fifth, and all that you've created over these thousands of years and you've built in the many lives to build and finally join what you have, your true inheritance, which is finally taking your place in the fifth. You by engaging in this hate, you could block that access. And that's why I wrote Laughing Gas. That's what I saw in my vision, is that my vibration was too low. I was too part of all these wars and all these aggressions, that my whole soul had been pulled down from its right to join on my destiny of what I'd built up all of these years, and I lost it all in this tragedy where I got sucked down and I was taken back down to the third, which means I lost access to the fifth, and this door won't come round for another 1800 years. Which means that if you do not enter the fifth now, all of your contributions to the fifth will be lost. Because every part of that will just be a reminder of all that you were and all that you are no longer. It will be gone. All the astral realms will be wiped clean, because they do not belong to many of those that incarnate in them, that have invaded them. They are done. They have been your home for a long time, but they are moving. You have to migrate now to a higher space. We are all changing our soul address here. This is a massive arrival of a whole load of new souls, a much bigger story. And so you have to come back to peace now. You have to wage peace. You have to know that there's something bigger and better for you beyond all this warring mayhem. They're going to try and desperately control hunger so they can control anger. And they can control war, and they can feed this. And this is going to be their attempt. And you have to know that there is no winning objective in this warring mayhem. You're going to have to wage peace. That is your only way through this now. Honey in the heart, 1,000 thank yous, and for all that you've done and for all that you've followed me, down this thing. This is such a hard time for me right now, and I'm struggling. I've bitten off way more than I can chew with everything I'm trying to take on. I'll always say, I'll say directly, you see my PayPal link on the top of the on the top of my channel there, the donate button. I won't ever write to you and give you telephone numbers or anything else like that. If I ever write to you and I give you an email address, it will be my email address. Which is subgeniustv@gmail.com. If you want to write to me via that channel, you can. You can leave comments down, but nothing else, because there's been a lot. AI is now producing a lot of a lot of attacks and different ways of attacking. So be really mindful of that. Really check that if you think you're communicating with me on any level outside of this channel, be mindful that it might not be me, that there might be all sorts of hacks going on, people faking me in lots of different ways. Just be really careful of everything that you're assuming is from someone you think it's from. People are getting robbed left, right and centre and ripped off on all sorts of different levels. But if you want to make a donation, please make a donation. I desperately need some cash at the moment. I'm just trying to get through, and I've got to cover that. I don't put any adverts on my channels. I don't go down any of that corridor, and I don't expect anything. There you've had this video, and if you've watched it and it's been helpful for you and you're ready to move through in whatever whichever way you're going, I hope, honey in the heart, 1,000 thank yous for all that you've done. Just your time is amazing, that you would spend any time following what I'm saying and they've had any impact in your life. It means an immense amount to me, and it's a gift to me that you followed me this long. So I don't expect anything. Only if you JDoc. I always call him JDoc74 because that's his name on Reddit, and he was a big contributor to this channel. And if it wasn't for him, I promise you, I would have given up this channel a long time ago. I know I only really run it. I know that I'm shadow banned. And I only really run it because I know that many of you that will come and find me and follow me and want this information, and it gives you some just knowing that there is a window on all of this, and I might be wrong in this. I just do my best in bringing the information together. You know, my model has changed all the way through this, and I could see this. It's just an attempt to begin to understand. Velikovsky said when he wrote, you know, Worlds in Collision, he said, I'm not right here. I'm just beginning. You are going to do the work. You are going to have much bigger answers as technology and everything increases. You're going to have much bigger answers to this equation. I'm just opening up this discussion, and really that's all I've done with all of this. Is just a beginning attempt to understand the real movements of the system that we live in, and how what's happened since, you know, since the Carrington event, 1859, right up to, you know, the kind of like Isaac Newton's time. Galileo. You know, E equals mc squared. Einstein's time, when he said around 1907, when he looked at the solar eclipse and he couldn't see all the planets next to the sun, which he's supposed to see, and they weren't there, and it's just like, weren't there? Well, that's the general theory of relativity. The gravity of the sun has sucked them all up, and so you can't see all the planets there. But of course, we could also say, well, maybe the whole model is just wrong and they're not there. Of course, we can't say that. So we've got to come up with another rash idea. And then 1930, it's just like, oh, it looks like it's so close, doesn't it? Pluto looks like it's right there. Just like we saw in 2018, Jupiter, massive. Why has Jupiter gone so big, blue and massive? Everyone marveling at the size of Jupiter. It's like it's right there to the 2018. Can you see it there? Why is Jupiter so big and massive? And now this coming back to that exact same point it was in 2018, and you're and now they're going to go and they're going to go there, fly into Venus and up to Jupiter. And like I say, you know, you've had so many epic shots. That Jeff P shot, I always come back to that. It always amazes me, that Jeff P shot. So we'll leave it on that shot. The most incredible shot of all. Jeff P, so much respect for you for all the work that you've done through this. You know, you've had to see it. You know, my model is not correct. It's not incorrect. It's just the best that I can do to try and understand this. You know, and beyond this, we might find it's more complex than this. And this is just the beginning work of us starting to see ourselves out of a 500-year-old ridiculous story. And if you think, why is it so important to understand why the sun's going? Ask yourself, why have so many invested so much time and so much effort in trying to make you believe, or taking the notion of the forward motion of your sun away from you, so you have no clue? That's the question you really want to ask, is not, why would anyone want to know where the sun is going? Why would so many people make so much effort to blind that from you? 21st of June, wherever you're going to be. Honey in the heart, 1,000 thank yous.